Our story now takes us to southwest Washington. I held on to my AirSolo extended range transport and had it fly me the 225 miles from Pasco to the town of Elma, which was close to the Grays Harbor County Correction Center in Montesano. The jail was located approximately 9 miles from Secure's North Gate Guard Station entrance. That route that the AirSolo chose took me right past Mount Rainier's southern slope, and some of the hot weather thermals made for a bumpy ride at times, but it was nevertheless exhilarating. During a 90-minute flight, I had time to reflect on what Captain McCoy had shared with me. I kept returning to his analogy, comparing revolving door police work with me losing a week's worth of riding at a time. And I have to admit that the comparison struck a nerve. On the flight to Elma, I reserved the rental car so that upon arrival at Elma's AirSolo platform, I could return the pricey transportation drone back into AirSolo's pool of personal air taxis. The drone would recharge and then fly off to its next customer. I holed up in my motel room and worked on my notes until it was time for dinner. I had skipped lunch and my stomach was growling. Elma had a wonderful little Thai restaurant that satisfied my hunger, and afterward I retired to my room, anticipating what was coming up tomorrow. The next morning I grabbed something quick for breakfast from a nearby fast food drive-thru and headed over to the jail while juggling my meal. Deputy Sean Cullen met me in the parking lot, and I kept a hold of my rental car, allowing it to find an available spot in the lot rather than return to public service. We entered through the front door and passed a huge sign that simply stated, "We're number one," with an exclamation mark. He led me to a private room where our interview commenced. "Deputy Cullen, thank you for seeing me. Can I call you Sean?" "Of course." Well, first off, I couldn't help but notice the big sign out front. And that sign is in recognition of our correction center delivering the very first resident to Secure. And I was the one who made the delivery, but it was a team effort getting good old Curtis out of his bunk and into the squad car at such an early hour. Well, I sense a good story coming our way. First of all, start with this Curtis guy. What's his background, and why did he end up in Secure? Curtis Clark had far from an ideal upbringing as a boy. His parents were both drunks, and with Curtis, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. He would get caught driving under the influence, and the judge would typically fine him, which he would never pay, and make him do some sort of community work, like picking up trash from the roadsides. He lost his license, but drove anyway. His car would get repossessed, but he'd find a replacement. He never had any insurance. All of what I just said, back then it was more common than you'd think. Did he ever hurt anyone due to his intoxication? He did. He got hammered once again and was driving home from the casino when he swerved over the center line and forced an oncoming car off the road and into a tree. And the car was one of those tiny, smart cars which offered minimal protection to the occupants. The young woman who was the driver ended up with bruises and a dislocated shoulder, but her 74-year-old grandmother broke her hip. And during surgery, she threw a blood clot that lodged in her brain and ended up leaving her with a debilitating stroke. The rest of her life would be spent in a wheelchair or a bed, and on top of that, she could barely speak a word that could be recognized. That is so tragic. You hear so many stories about drunk or stoned drivers who leave death, chaos, and destruction in their wake. So with T-minus 6 day falling on January 1st, and with Secure opening on July 4th, how exactly did Curtis manage to rack up 3 strikes during that period? Well, as I recall, he actually picked up his first strike after he drove home early on New Year's Day from a big party at the casino the night before. He forced an incoming car into the ditch and then soon joined it. The judge never sent him to jail, perhaps because he knew Curtis would be getting his first strike, who knows. A month later, a police cruiser pulled him over for swerving all over the road, and nobody was hurt, but he blew a 1-4. Again, no jail time, but strike two. In late February, that's when he had his little run-in with a smart car above. He was sentenced on March 4th for a 4-month stint in this here jail. And on July 4th, 1 second into the new day, Curtis had completed his jail sentence and was free to leave. But at that exact same moment, I-1719's new law for accumulated criminal convictions kicked in, and he was immediately rearrested and transported to Secure. So you couldn't even let him finish his sleep? I know, but this was an opportunity that would only come around once in our lifetime, and we had the perfect window to get our guy checked in as the first resident, so we took it. After he arrived, I'm told they did some minimal processing and took him straight to bed, which was an upgrade over the jail bunk that he had crawled out of. So I take it must have been your first exposure inside of Secure. Yeah, it was almost surreal. You had to drive him there. That's right, they probably didn't have AirSolos back then, did they? Hey, it wouldn't matter. It's all restricted airspace. Oh, you're right, it is. Anyway, Sean, give us a play-by-play, if you will. Okay, let's see. Curtis had a non-violent rap sheet, so he was scheduled to be processed in West Secure, which is also known as Secure's West Neighborhood. There are 2 guard stations in West Secure, the North Gate and the West Gate. And I chose the North Gate because it was the fastest route from the jail. Thinking back to that early morning transport, I was really hoping that no other police force would beat me there. Keys Road used to cross the Chehalis River on the way to the old business park, but Secure replaced the old bridge with a much larger one that crossed both the Chehalis and Secure rivers. I pulled up to the guard station and they first asked me to look at a camera in order to have my face registered with their computer system, and then they had me extend my wrist so they could fit me with what they called a temporary location band. So what about Curtis? He'd get his location band a few minutes later. Oh yes, I forgot. Before I reached the guard station, I saw a large sign on the side of the road, and it read, "Welcome to Secure, Washington. Population 00, 000." And the number after population was in bright electronic numerals. Looking good so far, as Curtis still being resident number 1. So you got your location band, and then what? The guard motioned us to drive across the bridge. He told me to drive to where the road came to a T, and then to turn left and head to the parking lot behind the West Secure Processing Center. There was a gate on the far side of the bridge which opened for us to pass through, and it closed immediately afterward. So Keys Road continued south into the heart of Secure. To my immediate left was a concrete wall that looked to be at least 20 feet high. The Secure Wall. Yes. Then we approached what turned out to be a huge, internally lit greenhouse building. I've never seen a greenhouse that large, to be honest with you. At the greenhouse, the road sharply turned west, and after going a little distance, it headed south again. And to the left was a fenced-in area called Grays Harbor Energy Center, and to the right was a fenced-in area for TerraPower's future Natrium nuke plant site. So I continued south until I reached the T, and then I turned left as instructed. There were several other huge structures, which I'll let you explain a little later, I guess. Thank you. I found the processing center and brought sleepy-eyed Curtis into the waiting area. It could have been a medical clinic waiting room, if I didn't know better. Someone came out to take Curtis out of my custody, and he was walking away. I told him I would pray for him. Well, that was very considerate of you, Sean. I understand that Curtis caused serious physical harm to at least one elderly woman. He was responsible for property damage as well, most likely tens of thousands of dollars worth. But his chaotic path is something that he will have to deal with going forward if he, in fact, has a conscience. Law enforcement has done its job, and now Secure, which truly should be the sole entity under the Washington State Department of Corrections Agency, will have a shot at straightening out his life. That's an interesting take, your comment about the Department of Corrections, that is. Don't the state's prisons now fall under that title? Yeah, believe me when I tell you, but it is rare as hen's teeth when someone leaves a years-long stint in one of our prisons being quote-unquote corrected. They essentially marinate with other inmates constantly and then are told to steer clear of those same people when they are later released under parole supervision. Prison should fall under the Department of Punishment because that is all they provide. Anyway, I probably said more than I should. No, Sean, thank you for those thoughts. You touched upon some of the very things that I had always thought about. So back to the secure processing center. You say goodbye to Curtis and then head back to this jail facility? Well, I had to wait a bit till they returned Curtis's jail wardrobe in a drawstring bag. What's funny was that as I was turning to leave with the bag, another cop from the city of Olympia was escorting a prisoner into the processing center. If looks could kill, I'd be dead. Curtis was resident number 1 by only a few minutes, it seemed. On my way out, I had to stop once again at the guard station, this time to surrender my location band. As I headed towards the freeway, I pulled up just past the welcome to secure sign, and I saw that the population number had changed to 00,001, and then soon after it changed to 00,002. I'd like you to have this photo. It's a copy from the last mugshot we took of Curtis as we checked him into our jail facility. If you run across him while you visit Secure, give him my best, if you will. I summoned my rental car to meet me at the jail's front entrance, and as I departed, enunciating to the car's nav system, Main Secure as my destination, I wondered if I'd be meeting up with Curtis during my stay in his neighborhood. He was smiling at the camera in the mugshot with rotted out teeth as a testament to a life lacking in dental care. He looked to be morbidly obese as well. The realization struck me that for everyone involved in our justice system, and I'm talking about both ends of the field, the good guys and the bad guys, the time period commencing on July 4th, 2029, began a whole new ballgame.